Hey, welcome to Mullen Stock. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications by hitting the bell so you never miss any of our uploads. And also remember that this is not a financial advice video. So over the last week, there's been a lot of things coming out from Mullen, unfortunately, some of which has just been very amateur mistakes. So I want to go over some of those and just some expectations going into next week. So I'm going to go over all that. So starting off, there was this that did come out. So Mullen issues letter to shareholders. I personally do feel that this letter is actually very well written. And their whole point that they're trying to get across, the fact that it's at a substantial discount in comparison to what they are doing and what they currently have, I think is fairly good, because they do say that they have $135 million in cash, which works out to be almost about 38 cents per share. But this is where they did make their first error. They did accidentally put down $0.38. So it's one of those unnecessary things that just shouldn't be done, which is very unfortunate, because I think that whole letter is actually very well written and is clearly positive. At least the undertone is very positive. So in reality, a lot of things like this shouldn't be done, in my opinion. And on a side note, I don't know how they have $135 million in cash, because I believe it was on April the 14th or the 12th, they did have $116 million as far as cash and cash equivalents at that stage. So of course, given how much they're burning through for salaries, expenses, even though they did have two different issuances of $45 million to the preferred stock, and then that $20 million from liquidus, I don't know how they still get $135 million. But of course, I am not a financial advisor. You guys always do your own due diligence. But I did kind of find this comical, the fact that they did add 10 here, and based on the preliminary 14A, they neglected 10 there. And what I mean by that is on June the 13th, they did submit their first one. So the pre-14A, where it does talk on the whole reverse stock split proposal number 3. So 1 to 2 to a max of 1 to 10. And this is where I'm talking how they neglected 10, because they did update that to 1 to 100. So kind of not necessarily the best in that regard. And the reason why I'm bringing these up is because a lot of this negative sentiment and errors that they've been making is going to most likely roll over into next week. And as well, shorts are taking advantage of this. Unfortunately, Mullen is kind of doing a lot of damage themselves, because even looking here under Lawrence, I know some of you guys don't want to hear about Lawrence, but he was supposed to have been starting the whole EPA testing mid-last week. We have not heard anything from him. If anything, he's just been posting a lot of very ambiguous kind of posts right here where it does kind of maybe hit Mullen potentially behind the scenes. So still a lot of things are happening with Mullen, but not necessarily all very much helping the stock price. So once again, you kind of have that, and then in addition to that, you have this. So on the 13th, David did achieve a performance stock award. So in general, he did get the 2.6 million shares. All of these are pre-split amounts. I don't know why it's showing under the Form 4 pre-split amounts. So just obviously do the appropriate calculations. So in general, he did get that, and then transaction code G and G on the 15th. So he could transfer shares, so roughly around 2 million shares. Then he did gift 541,000 shares. So I don't know if that was maybe gifting to Lawrence. That's where I kind of saw some things floating around. Obviously, I think this is where shareholders are back at the stage where they're trying to piece things together on their own accord. Whereas in general, it'd be good for, obviously, David himself to update on exactly what is happening behind the scenes. And in general, I'm bringing this up because even though he didn't necessarily sell any shares, it's still one of those underlying things that he has never actually bought any physical shares. And as you can see, these are all the transactions for Mullen, all the insiders. And of course, there's David. He did physically sell. He did gift more shares here. He gifted. Transaction code J, so he obviously transferred. Once again, David, he gifted. So it's very common occurrence that I don't know who he's gifting all these shares to. It'd be very good to know. But still the bigger picture kind of question is why has he not put any money? He has not even put one physical dollar of his own money in Mullen, and I think this is one of the biggest negative sentiments. It's the fact that he's not doing that, and it kind of signals that he has no belief in the stock. So again, that's just my own interpretation and how I see things. But a lot of this, whether it be him just trading or obviously gifting stock amateur mistakes here, Lawrence not giving any real substantial updates on the whole EPA, and he's very vocal. And I think we already do know that sometimes too much though. But in general, shorts are very much there to take advantage of all that, even though on Thursday and Friday there was a little bit more hints. The fact that there was at least a bottoming, that it was going to be starting to reverse. Because on Thursday, there was a lot of good volatility. And on Friday, even though it did close 12.5% down, it started out very strong, so it was a high of around 30.5 cents. But still, at the end of the day, with all this stuff that's been floating around, shorts have been taking advantage. So right now, 37.66% of the free float is being shorted. That isn't 100% correct. I do anticipate it to be around 32%. And what I mean by that is the outstanding shares is what Ortex has is 243.57 million. Whereas, based on the recent prelim, it does show 263 or 264, if I remember correctly. So of course, if you just adjust that, it does put the short interest to around the 32% range, short scores. Currently, 80 utilization is 93.14%, but still, with 31.25 million shares being shorted, that is pretty significant. So shorts are able to get in and out as they see fit because unfortunately kind of just show a lack of buying behind the scenes. I think in general there was a little bit more of a potential rebound, or at least bottoming on Thursday, Friday, because merely the stock price and kind of goes in line with this letter as well. Based on how much cash that they do have, the whole stock is just at a substantial discount. So I think that might have been why people potentially would be getting in on those days. But still, operationally, people are still very much concerned based on everything. One thing to note on here though, but I don't know if you guys want to interpret it as a positive in proposal number 7. It does state, obviously, the performance stock award agreement. And one of them is the whole M1, how it's actually going to be starting to have production and out for delivery. I believe it does state December of 2023, and typically a lot of those are very much easily achievable. So David can get the whole performance and hit that as a check mark, get his, I think, 2% or 3% of the outstanding shares given to him as an award, similar to what happened right here on the 13th. But still again, that might be something that David could potentially come up with. News saying that they're going to be starting a whole M1 production, maybe in August or maybe September. Somewhere around there, obviously, matching before the December. So once again, I do feel that a lot of people are not really buying right now until they actually hear some credible news as far as production or physically. They start to see a lot and a substantial amount of M3s rolling off the lot. So again, it's kind of just stuck in limbo right now. So unfortunately, even though I do agree with this letter right here, that it is at a substantial discount, the amount of money that they're burning through, but yet not really generating sufficient amount of revenue, I do feel that the stock price might be continuing to trend down. But of course, I could be very, very much wrong about that. Over the last, let's say 2 months, there's been a lot of good updates coming out from Mullen that is kind of laying down the good foundation of obviously for them to succeed. Just in the meantime, until they do actually start production, it's just going to be bleeding, and you can kind of maybe even look at a lot of the options activity. Based on Friday alone, there was $362,000 in put premiums that were purchased. So of course, that is a 180. What's been happening over the last 2 months? There was a ton of calls and no puts, but despite obviously it being near the 52-week and all-time low. Right now, people are still anticipating it to continue to go down. But keep in mind, options activity does not move the stock price. It is just merely a sentiment. So based on everything right now, stochastic is currently at 3. So that's very, very oversold momentum number. Retail investors, oddly enough, were getting in on Friday, but still this is well below 0. So at 0, retail investors are maintaining their position and not really getting in. It's kind of evenly divided. So the fact that it is at below 0, that does show that there is retail losing and kind of getting out on a daily basis. So once again, not necessarily the best kind of circumstance that Mullen is in right now. But like I said, and I have said in the past, if you do strongly believe in Mullen and what they are trying to achieve bigger picture, take advantage of these discounted prices, similar to what this letter does say, which, like I said, I think this is a fairly well-written letter. But in reality, it comes down to, and it does boil down to the fact that Mullen does need to stop making a lot of these very basic errors, and even just stop as what it looks like kicking shareholders while they are down. A lot of people are saying that this is kind of just hidden code for certain things, that the whole reverse stock split is for some strategic purpose. In reality, I kind of do disagree with that. Proposal number 3 is very laid out very easily in here on what they're trying to achieve. Guys, that's all we have for you today. What is your opinion about Mullen stock? Get involved and let us know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.